Should President Trump be taking a victory lap here?
I think the president does deserve to take a victory lap, considering what has been accomplished today. The release of the last 20 remaining hostages who were alive, are alive in Gaza. The cessation of hostilities for now, the flowing in of much needed assistance into Gaza. These are important milestones. However, I think the president is perhaps premature in saying the war is over. The difficult steps ahead are the ones that we will have to watch closely to see if, in fact, his aspirations become reality.
And Mona, how does that play out if you were going to say that this is presumably some form of a stopgap and not necessarily a conclusion and marking a next chapter? What plays out? How does this play out? And kind of what's your view on that?
Well, what will distinguish what happened today from ceasefires in the past is if the various points that are laid down in President Trump's 20-point plan are in fact implemented. Critical among them is the disarming of Hamas. Hard to know how exactly that's going to happen. The agreement itself is very short on details. There's also the envisioning of an international stabilization force that would surge into Gaza and be responsible for security. Not at all clear how that's going to happen. And of course, questions around governance and the constituting of a committee of Palestinian technocrats to be overseen by former British Prime Minister Tony Blair. I mean, there are so many details that have yet to be ironed out, let alone implemented. And I think these are the key potential sticking points in the coming days and weeks and likely months.
Mona, and I think it's fair to say, right, a conflict like this that has gone on not just in the last 2 years of a war, but it's been going on for a long time between Israel and Gaza and Hamas. What is Hamas, though, in a world where there is no conflict between Hamas and Israel? I mean, they have been designated terrorist groups. So I'm just curious, what is Hamas potentially going forward in if there's real peace in this region?
Well, I think you point to a really important issue here. I mean, Hamas's raison d'etre is resistance against Israel and against Israeli occupation. Now, presumably, if all of the various elements that would bring actual peace between Israelis and Palestinians come into fruition, then that would indeed sort of, I think, dramatically undermine the rationale for Hamas to continue to exist. But I do think it's really important, Carol, to note this agreement talks about and calls for the disarming of Hamas. It does not call for the destruction of Hamas as Prime Minister Netanyahu has called for and made a centerpiece of his policies on Gaza.
So, okay, so that's an important distinction, correct?
Very much so. I mean, we're already seeing reporting that as Israeli troops withdraw from limited areas of Gaza, there is reporting that Hamas is filling in and is taking over. And so, again, this just gives you a sense of how daunting this challenge is going to be going forward.
And Mona, you have more than 30 years of experience in the Middle East and North Africa. With that in mind, what do the next weeks and months, years look like?
Well, I think immediately what's going to need to happen is more meat on the bones of exactly how it is that this agreement that all of these various leaders just signed off on in Sharm El-Sheikh, how will those points actually be implemented? So I think the first order of the day is going to be figuring out how to establish security on the ground as Israeli troops withdraw. And not at all clear how that's going to happen. What are the mechanisms by which Hamas is going to be disarmed, and to whom? Whom will they give their arms to? And then, of course, the other key element of any post-conflict stabilization is governance. You've got to have governance. You've got to have authorities on the ground. Who will they be? How will that structure be set up? Those are really critical questions, and we're a long ways from understanding what the details are that will govern those various arrangements.
Does a disarmed Hamas, just to kind of tie this up, do they want a Gaza, a Palestinian state that actually thrives?
Presumably, they have called and would be in agreement with that. But as always, the devil is in the details. For example, they are saying that Israel must withdraw 100% from Gaza. That is not envisioned by the plan. And ultimately, what does a Palestinian state look like? Is there a way to actually build a Palestinian state from the current set of circumstances that we see on the ground? That is also going to be extraordinarily difficult. As long as these questions remain, there will be space for resistance. There will be space for groups like Hamas or its successor to cause trouble.